Welcome to Momentum Monday. Today is May 4th, 2025. Howard, does anything excite you in this market right now?
I mean, you got to be loving this, right?
I
I'm
mean,
excited that I think you're probably doing well on this tape, no?
yeah, I'm doing well. The recovery is much stronger than I think anyone has expected so
Yeah.
far and much quicker just
Uh-huh.
based on headlines. But, when price action and sentiments and headlines are going in the opposite direction, I think it's better to trust price action
Yeah.
just because we have to assume that, people with inside information or just people that know more about the world have to be buying. Otherwise, why are those stocks going up?
Yeah,
Um,
I think it'd be frustrating if you're managing, stock picking and you're managing a lot of money because it's just, but I think two stocks stand out. Like if I look at Apple and I look for the tariffs, if I look at Apple, um, I mean it's weak, right? And then I mean that's affected by like they lost the 30% taxing, and you could look at the opposite side of that with Spotify and Netflix, which gain, now they can that 30% that Apple was charging comes back to them now, right? And same with Spotify, right? Because they had to pay the 30% to Apple if you download it on the iTunes store. Now that drops to like 3%. So I think, the companies including anybody selling a subscription, Apple had that kind of a monopoly, or what do you call it? Like they were like the mob, right? So, and on the opposite side of that, Apple's got, they got to kiss the ring. They're not growing. I go into the store all the time, but it's mostly just to buy AirPods, right? I
yeah,
don't need a new laptop. Like like AI, you may need a new phone eventually. But Apple's AI is not that great anyway, so you're using ChatGPT. And then I look at Deckers. So Apple's struggling, and then I look at Deckers, which is like an American roll-up brand and relies on China, and there's no so the tariffs are real, or at least if your business is dependent on China, this isn't just a bear market. This is like life or death, not for Apple, but for many companies this is end of life. So it's really, the market cap weighted indexes are lagging. They bounce nicely, but they're lagging because you knock out China off like the biggest companies. And that's real. Like you look at Meta and, the Chinese ads from all these companies are going to drop.
yeah,
But because it's not doing hardware from China, it's bouncing better than Apple. So I'm watching like the tariffs are real, at least on China. Trump is not going to bend. Like the rhetoric is real. But if you're not dependent on China and you're in software, like you said, like IG, like the software index is doing fine, like
yeah.
relatively.
Relative to, semiconductors, much
Yeah.
stronger. Yeah,
So the headlines were right, but they affect different industries in different ways. And the dip got bought. VIX 60, we were talking about it. Like, you got to buy VIX 60. Am I as convinced to buy today, tomorrow? No, like there was a great place to add some exposure. And, I don't think this is a great place to add exposure because he's a high volatility president. So so those are the stocks I'm watching. Decker's, Apple,
yeah.
software, and and still the degenerate economy. Like the Robin Hoods of the world are doing fine.
Yeah, I mean, you're right that tariffs have very real impact. And we saw it last week when we had that negative GDP print. And the reason for that was that there was a huge jump in imports. So all the companies who were able to import ahead of tariffs did so, and that impacted the GDP growth substantially. So that's why we had that negative print. But the market quickly realized that the reason it's not really a drop in consumer spending, it is exactly a big jump in imports. So I think the real really impact uh, on companies' bottom line. We'll probably see in the second half of the year, and the
Yeah.
market is kind of forward-looking. So we'll see which stocks are going to continue to trend higher and which stocks are going to reverse lower, because we're definitely starting to be in a market of stocks environment where the market
Yeah.
is starting to pick the winners and the potential losers. And I think last week
Yeah.
it was something to note that, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, they beat earnings estimates, and they acted, much stronger than the rest of the market. And now, if you look at Nasdaq 100, it's already at its 200-day moving average, so it's outperforming the S&P, it's outperforming the Russell 2000.
And that's without Apple really helping. Yeah.
Yeah, without Apple helping, which just comes to show that
Without NVIDIA really helping.
maybe the rumor of the Magnificent Seven debt is exaggerated, and those companies are coming back strong, at least for now. And yes, you're
Yeah.
right that a substantial percentage of the sales on Amazon come from, Chinese companies or stuff that is made in China. A
Yeah.
substantial percentage on the advertising revenue in Meta is from Chinese companies.
Yeah.
Um,
It, you're gonna feel it. Like, let's go back and look at Tesla, which is obviously a great company in many levels, and go back and look at the weekly. I mean, so assume there's going to be volatility with this president, but there's a real chance within this volatility, most stocks just mark time for the next, year, right? That wouldn't surprise me because everybody's expecting this rally to continue. And at Big 60, everybody was enjoying the fact that the world was coming to an end. And so there's a case to be made where the market just screws everybody over and only the insiders make money,
it
which is,
could remain range bound in a very, wide range for the
yeah, I
foreseeable
think it'll be a
future.
wide range. Because, if I look at Netflix, I mean, I'm super bullish.
I mean, Netflix, Palantir, they're like a bunch of companies that are already at
But
all-time
I'm not
highs.
I'm not
Yeah.
buying it at these levels. Like, I mean, you index, you own it, but I'm not going to pay top dollar when everybody's in the same trade idea, right? They're infallible right now with Spotify. But, the market priced in this 30% from Apple pretty quickly. I mean, I wasn't following the news until recently, so I didn't know that Apple news, until last week. But I think um, the good stock seems so rich, or the good company, the clean companies already seem discovered. And so I worry about that. I mean, look at Uber though, breaking out. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm super bullish.
very strong.
I
Yeah.
own some Uber. It's hard not to be bullish, right? With Waymo and them partnering. And um, just this habit of eating, getting Uber. I used it all weekend to Uber. I go through periods, and in New York, I was using when I wasn't on the subway, I was an Uber. So, that's a pretty good. What does the transportation index look like, Ivan?
So much
Yes.
worse. It's in a downtrend
Yeah,
below
so it's
declining
interesting, right?
50.
Like
Yeah.
Uber is kicking butt and the transportations are, which makes sense, right? Like, we're shrinking the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yet Uber is shrinking the world in a much different way because we're not dependent on China, right? So super interesting. Energy costs coming down. I mean, it's still the biggest worry I have is rates. All this maneuvering and rates aren't doing anything. They're still high,
Yeah, for
right?
now, obviously they've been pressuring the Fed to cut rates, and maybe
But
with
now
the
that's priced in,
negative.
right? Everybody knows that's coming at this point. Like,
It's
because
at some point, but maybe not as soon as people expect. As we saw on Friday, the employment report was came again above estimates, and it's hard to believe that they're going to make a move before they see a spike in unemployment, which
I'm
is
trying to.
typically a lagging indicator.
The
Um,
other one I was going to show, Ivan, was, yeah, you're right, Instacart, which is like kind of an Uber and DoorDash. So Cart, see, so
Sure.
there's DoorDash, which I own in my degenerate, and Instacart looks interesting, right? Like, that thing
Yeah,
just hammered at its IPO, and now we're back above the IPO print. So that's basically an all-time high. What's
yeah.
this one? Maple. This is what's in, I don't
Oh,
get it.
cards. Isn't
Oh, I don't know why it's called
Instacart?
Maple Bear. Okay.
That's their name, yeah.
Um, but anyways, that's pretty bullish, and that's a big ass business. I'm trying to think what else looks good.
Anything
The
cybersecurity is looking good, really.
yeah, yeah.
Here's a recent IPO, RBRK, FTNT. I mean, we mentioned Palantir. Really, anything in this sector is super strong.
Okay.
Okta, uh,
Oh, okay. Okay.
CrowdStrike.
That's right. Yeah. So the good news is, I mean, there's good news, bad news. Like this only gives Trump the market rallying only lets Trump get away with more nonsense, right? I worry about the sleight of hand, right? Like we have always known the government, they're just dirty dealing. Now it just seems to be front page obvious. They're not even hiding it. So I worry about that, just the morale of people. But the market's healed pretty well. I don't think that just I'm surprised.
Very quick bounce, but I think people should be a little bit careful chasing here right at
Yeah.
a declining 200-day moving average, especially on the week of FOMC meeting. So I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if we see some slight pullback, sideways consolidation, uh, as potentially we gain some power for another push higher. But the market has already highlighted the potential winners. You mentioned Netflix, Spotify, the cybersecurity stocks, some other sectors also, like some foreign stocks, like SE, um,
Yeah, I own SE. It's just
also approaching, 52-week highs. And then there are a bunch of, others from other sectors. So there are
okay.
already winners, companies that are expected to benefit in that new world order, and they're obviously losers. And
Yeah.
so there's something for everyone.
All right, buddy. We'll keep it short. Everything else all right?
Everything's good.
All right, I'm in San Diego for the rest of the summer, so I'll hit you up.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Have a great week.
All right. Thanks, Howard.
See you, bud.